Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to tonight's episode of Doop on the Volley, Philadelphia Sports Network, Philadelphia Sports Network's podcast covering all things Philadelphia soccer. We're back here tonight with another episode on a day which was had a lot of Union news, an historic night in Union history, if you will. And there's a lot to talk about from last week and coming up this week. But before I throw it over to my co-hosts and see how they're doing tonight, I just wanted to give you guys a reminder to go ahead and follow or like or subscribe to whatever channel you're listening on. We do come with episodes every week, or we try to every week. We had a bunch of us were sick last week, so but mostly every week, either Thursday or sometimes Saturday pre-game if the Union are on the road. But one time a week we usually are live, and the podcast will be available on anywhere that you can find podcasts, usually the same night or the next morning as well. Just wanted to give a reminder for everyone to go ahead and do all that so that you guys can be caught up with all of our news. But before we jump into all the news that we have to talk about, let's throw it over to our co-hosts. We got Eric and Paul here tonight. Guys, good to see you after not talking last week. How are you guys feeling this week?
Feeling pretty good. Excited to take my gaze away from European soccer for a little bit and focus back in on the Union. Especially after the second half last week, and we'll get to that obviously, but that got my hopes up a little bit more than they otherwise might have been.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Eric. It's glad to be back talking with you guys. It's been a little bit of a hectic week. Get my mind off Manchester United losing to Crystal Palace 4-0. Monumental day today, but we'll get into more of that as we talk. Excited to talk some Union soccer with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is good to be back with you guys. Last week was hard. I think a lot of people are sick right now, so I was feeling that as well. And I know it was just a crazy week. A lot of us were either just starting to feel better or we're just starting to not feel super good. So it's good to be back and talking with you guys. And it comes at a great time because, like we said, there was a big piece of Union news that dropped today after months of reports of it coming. Today, the Union finally announced the signing of 14-year-old wonder kid, one of the best 14-year-olds in the world, Cavan Sullivan, to a homegrown contract. And not only a homegrown contract, but the first of its kind in MLS standards anyway. It's a deal that not only keeps Cavan in Philadelphia until he's 18, but it comes as the biggest homegrown signing in MLS history. And it also comes with an agreement for him to go to a European club once he turns 18, which, like I said, that is kind of one of the first of its kind, with the player having a move built into his contract already. So it's, we've heard rumblings of this happening, and it was only a matter of time. And it's kind of weird to think about, because a few months ago it seemed like a real distant possibility that we would ever even see him sniff the first team minutes. But now, after hearing Jim in his press conference today, he said it's coming sooner than a lot of people think. So there's a lot of excitement around this. There's a lot to talk about. We still have a couple quotes and stuff to go over regarding the situation. But right off the bat, I want to get your guys' instant reactions when you saw the news. Let's kick it off with Paul.
My instant reaction was, this is a massive moment for both the Union and Major League Soccer. Having one of the top talents in the world sticking with your club and in your league. Obviously, he's 14, so it would have been hard to go over to Europe, but still having him stay in this league to develop, it shows the growth that this league has been wanting to show throughout the world, that these top talented youngsters are wanting to stay in the league, and they feel that they have the ability to develop in this league and get to Europe eventually in their career. But it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time to be a Union fan, and to be honest, I knew the announcement was coming. I didn't know when, but I was really shocked that Cavan got number 6. That was honestly a real true shock to me.
Yeah, I was also a little surprised by that. But to your point before that, if you're listening to this and you're not super familiar with who Cavan Sullivan was previous or prior to today, and you're hearing people call him, the best 14-year-old in the world, that's not Union fans and media saying that. That's not even the Union saying that. That's the biggest teams and the biggest recruiters and scouts in the world saying that. And, Ernst Tanner had a press conference as well today, and he on record said he is one of the biggest talents on the globe. And he went on to say that he's probably one of the top 3 young talents that he's seen in his 30-year career across, working in Europe and elsewhere. And he reminds him of Dominic. I'm going to butcher this last name, but Dominic Szoboszlai, is that
Szoboszlai?
There we go. Yeah. Which again, I saw a lot of people say, like, how can you even remotely say that a 14-year-old is how can you compare him to someone that's just coming up and is going to be a really a staple in Liverpool's team. And I think the point is, and the way that people are able to say this is, wherever Cavan has played, no matter what age group he's playing in, he's been the best player on the field. And he has what all those scouts are looking for and what everyone is looking for. And so for Union to get a hold of him and keep him here, like you guys said, until he goes over to Man City, it's a huge thing for not only the Union, but for him and his development as well. I think that's a huge thing that the group, Jim Curtin, Marlon LeBlanc, they talked about in their press conference today, was saying keeping a young kid in his environment, keeping him in his bed, keeping him with his parents on a day in and day out schedule is going to be, can realize right now, that's way easier for a young kid to swallow than going over to Austria or wherever and trying to learn a new language and fit in with people he's never met. So that's a huge deal. When you look at the number, we don't really know the reported fee, or at least I haven't seen it. If you guys have, let me know, at least from a Union's perspective. I know Manchester City are reported to have signed him for near $5 million. I think when it's all said and done, Union will get, as well as a sell-on clause. But I don't know that there's been a reported fee for the MLS homegrown contract and what that specific number is to be the biggest contract. But Tom Bogart did report today that it looks like his annual salary is going to be somewhere around $500,000, which puts him above quite a few people on Union's roster. I just want to get y'all's take on that. A 14-year-old who I think is making more money. The numbers for this year haven't come out, so that it's to be determined. But going off last year's number, I think this 14-year-old is now making more money than his brother. Eric, what's your thoughts on that? And are we overhyping this kid right now, or is this all warranted?
I think kind of both in some ways. I think we're definitely overhyping him, but I think that's natural given the historic nature of everything to do with his signing. But I think it certainly seems pretty warranted. Obviously, it's impossible to say that for now, but I did from all indications, it seems like it's warranted. I think I saw that based on last year's salaries, he's making more than his brother Jack McGlynn and Nate Harriel combined. Something along those lines. I think he's making more than Bizo. Again, this is all last year's contract numbers, so it's difficult to say for this year because, like you said, those numbers haven't come out yet. The number 6 struck me too, but with Union, it's been used a little more offensively than teams typically use it. A lot of the midfielders that have worn it. I mean, Gazdag had it for a while. Mm-hmm. So you look at its history with this team specifically, and it makes a little more sense. but I was definitely caught out by it. I think it feels like I don't recall ever seeing a contract like this, not just in MLS, but kind of ever across the world in terms of having that future transfer built in from the get-go.
Yeah.
It feels like a very historic, like it feels like something that wouldn't typically happen. The team are making a lot of accommodations for this kid, and it seems like it's worth it. I hope it doesn't cause any locker room strife with those annual salary numbers. You might have a few first team players a little unhappy with that. If you're one of those players that's been making a contribution for a few years, and you see this kid getting paid that much, maybe you're going to be a little upset about it. But yeah,
I think that's a really valid point that, honestly, I had thought about, but haven't put into much context into the situation of, I thought about it just from I didn't look at it in the scope of Union in that context, but looking at it from that context, yeah, I think it could cause some issues. But Jim was on record saying today in his press conference that Cavan did have his first training session with the team, and it took the team all but like 10 seconds for them to give him the ball, and they kept giving him the ball and kept running into space with him and playing give and goes with him, and I think that's a great sign already. Is they're not shooing him off as some kid that's just like a PR stunt or whatever. They actually believe in his talent and his potential, and that'll go a long way in his development too. Being given the chance to show what he can do and being given trust from his teammates is going to be huge for a 14-year-old coming up and trying to find confidence in himself once he, I think when you're young and you don't really know much about the world, it's easy to be confident. But once you start going through puberty and all those types of things that a 14-year-old goes through, confidence can start to be a little harder to come by. So I think having good teammates like that is going to be super, super beneficial. Paul, I'm interested to hear how you're feeling about are we going to see him this season? Like, is Jim saying that it's coming sooner than we think? Is that truthful? Is that to put butts in seats? What's the thought process here? And how are you feeling about that?
It's really complicated when you think of it because he's only featured a couple times for Union too. I mean, and he is 14 years old. Plus, in addition to, I really don't understand the labor laws and all that aspect for a 14-year-old. So I know there's some weird time where if it's after a certain time he can't play in the game, or I haven't really looked into all that nonsense. Didn't really think of it until I just said it. But I think if everything lines up, you might honestly see him play this, and maybe in the Leagues Cup when we have everyone going for the Euros and the Olympics, and like half the team is just leaving for international duty. You might see him feature then, but on all honestly, I think it'll be best, I guess, unless he's really proving himself, that he just sticks with the Union 2 side and grows himself down there and develops more. Because playing in the MLS as a 14, 15-year-old would be incredible feat, sure. But it's a much very physical league, and as much as I would love to see it, I don't think it makes too much sense, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I think it's kind of one of those. I think it'll be for Union one of those things where it's kind of we're gonna get him in the game to just kind of to do the parade type deal, but not any type of meaningful minutes, at least for the near future. But I think it is important, or not even important, but it's interesting to note that if he were to debut before July 29th of this year, he would be the youngest debutant for across any major sport in North America. That's MLB, MLS, NBA, NFL, NHL, and NWSL, as well as every top 5 soccer league across Europe. He would literally be the youngest to debut in like the major sports history in our country, which is absolutely wild, and which is why I could see Union doing. One of those things where he comes on in the 90th minute in a 3-1 game or something, and just give the kid his flowers, get everyone up and cheering for him, and then put the kid to work down in U2 or the 17s or wherever he's going to end up playing. I guess U2 mostly, but I think it is important. With all this being said, there is a lot of focus that was put on this press conference about him just being a 14-year-old and him just being a kid that plays soccer and letting the support system and the environment around him build him up and develop him as he grows old. He's got the foundation, what it takes to be one of the best players in the world already, the hard work, the dedication. He said himself today, he was asked what he does outside of soccer, and he says, I don't really do anything outside of soccer, which you would expect from a 14-year-old who's, being bought by Manchester City. But the point being is that, I don't think it's going to come down to motivation with this kid, and that's kind of echoed by all the people that are around him right now too. If you listen to Marlon LeBlanc today, he said, or let's start with this Jim Curtin quote. He said his job right now is to just be a kid. Our job is to create an environment that he can thrive in, and I think that hits it perfectly on the nail right on top of the head. It is really about him just playing soccer with his friends right now and letting his coaches take care of the rest, and him not getting sucked in to all the noise. And Cavan talked about that as well. He said, through all the noise, negative or positive, I just focus on my game and development, and it doesn't really get to me, good or bad. And that response actually got a fist bump from Jim Curtin in the press conference. I think Jim was just impressed and proud to see a young kid seemingly having his head on his shoulders in probably what would be most grown adults' best day of their life, and this kid's 14 years old. So I think there's a lot of good things to come from this. I'm just looking for that Marlon quote here before we move on. Yeah, here we go. Marlon, Union 2's coach, said, we're going to give Cavan the platform. We're going to give Cavan the platform to develop, but we're going to make sure he does it the right way. I know Cavan is going to do it the right way. He doesn't want to do it any other way. So again, all these signs of dedication and motivation and being determined to get there. And not only, I think he understands this is just the first step, not the step, not the final step. It's being echoed by all the people around him. And I think there's a lot of really positive signs. So whether we see him play meaningful minutes this year or not, I think it's a really historic day, not only for Cavan, not only for Union, not only for MLS. We talked about, Eric, you brought up the point of we've never really seen a contract where a homegrown player gets a move to a bigger team built into it before. So I think that's kind of an unprecedented thing too. But on addition to that, it puts Philadelphia Union on the map as an organization as a whole. Not only the players, not only the first team players or the coaches, but it shows every kid around the country that if I want to go play in Europe, there's a team in Philadelphia that people have actually gone and done that with. Manchester City is buying 14-year-olds from Philadelphia. Like, I want to do that too. And as a 14-year-old, that seems like a realistic goal to you. And it is. And that is, that's what the Union want, is they want dreamers, and they want these kids in America to want to play for them and want to become the best players in the world. And that's where they're going to get their talent. And we're seeing that. And I think it's important to bring up, and we'll talk about this. This was just one of 3 signings, homegrown signings, that the Union made in the last 10 days. Not Cavan Sullivan, but Andrew Rick, young goalkeeper. Although it's by technicality a little bit because of the amount of emergency call-ups he had to have with the first team. He's been signed to a homegrown deal, as well as David Vasquez, the young midfielder from Union too. So there's a lot of exciting names coming through this Union pipeline right now. And I am really excited to get back to a Union 2 game. And we've got a little bit before that happens, but I'm expecting more people to get out there as well. And they should, because outside of Cavan, there's a lot of really good players coming up through the system right now. So, guys, any last thoughts on this signing before we move on to the DC recap?
One last thing. I just wanted to say I loved how happy Cavan looked. If you guys were able to watch the press conference today, he was smiling like the whole entire time, and it's enjoyable as a fan of the sport, enjoyable as a fan of the team to see a player of this caliber being so happy. I know he's making part one of his dream come true. Part two will be made when he signs the Man City contract in 4 years. But which hurts me to say, but I just think it's such a great moment for soccer fans all over the country to see this, and it's even greater that we get to enjoy it in person as Philadelphia Union reporters and fans and all type of that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it really did make like global news today. You know, Fabrizio Romano's tweeting about it. It makes ESPN headlines. It was on actual ESPN on TV, which I know isn't as prestigious as it maybe once was in the sports world. But regardless, they're talking about the Philadelphia Union on TV. So yeah, it is really a big day, and I think people have the reason to be excited. But again, I've said it from the beginning. He's just got to go and be a kid right now. That's the biggest thing. And people need to support him like that too. You know, don't get too on him if he's not playing or if he doesn't play well. He's a kid. Just let him learn from his mistakes. Sometimes those can be the biggest learning moments. And just support him through that. No matter, you know, however you as a supporter or a fan know best. Treat him as if he was your favorite player with the first team. And if he was your friend, like that's how we should just be treating people in general. We get too hard on players, especially like people. I don't know if people know this, but players see what you all say about them on Twitter. And I know some of you don't care about it, but people have feelings, and just take that. Just remind yourself of that next time you go on a heater about someone, which I get is warranted sometimes. But I digress. Let's move on to DC. For the 5th time this season, Union come back from a deficit, but it comes in a game where they give up the first goal for the 7th time in 10 games. Man, it's getting a little painful to watch that, guys. But I think let's start with this. Let's start with the lineup. So it was a bit of a different lineup from Jim Curtin on Saturday down in DC. It's coming on the back of 2 losses, so maybe that plays into it a little bit. You're trying to send a little bit of a message. But the Union came out against DC in that 4-4-2 flat. That 4-4-2 flat, I think, is what they like to call it. Let's get your guys' initial reactions on that. Just to remind you on the lineup, it was Julian Carranza up top with Daniel Gazdag. And then in the midfield, we had Jack McGlynn. Leon Flock made his first start this season after a long injury that he suffered in the later stages of last year. Ali Bedoya got the start again. And then Quinn Sullivan finished out that midfield. In defense, we had Kai Wagner, Damian Lowe, Jacob Glesnes, Nate Harriel, and then Oliver Semla was in net. Andre Blake, again, just really struggling with his health. And I guess we can talk about that more in depth in a little bit. But again, just wanted to get your guys' reactions when you saw this lineup drop. How are you feeling about that going into the DC game? Let's start with Eric on this one.
I was foolishly optimistic, honestly, because there had been times when we changed to that not too long ago when it actually made a big difference and helped the team. It feels like that's happened kind of a lot this year, where a lineup, sometimes a formation that helped us one game will hurt us in a different one. And I don't know if that has to do with the personnel or what, but yeah, I was, I guess, a little surprised. Part of me thought maybe it wouldn't even be a 4-4-2. Like, part of me expected it to maybe, to look more like the traditional formation, with maybe Flock playing the number 6 role. Doesn't sound right anymore with Sullivan being number 6, but the defensive midfielder role, and then like Bedoya and McGlynn with Gazog at his normal 10 role, and then Sullivan up top with Carranza. But yeah, it did not work.
With the way that Union used to release their lineup graphics as the actual formation, and Union, please go back to that. I know,
yes, please.
Decision from within the team not to tip what formation they're giving away, but listen, your opponent's figuring that out in the first 45 seconds of the game anyway. Just put the damn formation on the graphic and let fans know ahead of time. I guess you could say the same for fans, but just let people know what the formation is. People like that way better, I think. You're right. It leaves a little bit of kind of guessing of what formation. I actually thought that they were going in the Christmas tree. I thought we were going to see Gazdag and Quinn as dual number 10s with Bedoya, Flock, and Jackson behind them. But yeah, we saw the 4-4-2 flat. Paul, what were you thinking on that? Were you happy with that? Or I guess it's a little bit easier to kind of nitpick it from in hindsight, but if you can put your bias aside, were you a fan of this formation when it did drop?
I was working up at the night of the game, and I can tell you my first reaction to the lineup was, huh? I guess that's really, I guess with the way Uro played earlier in the year, I know Curtin said it was due to form, but I guess I was a little shocked to see him dropped. I was happy to see Leon Flock back in the 11 after his injury. Big Leon Flock guy here. I guess I was similar to you, Jimmy. I was expecting a Christmas tree formation. And I was like, I guess at the time with the way the personnel looked, it would have made sense to run the Christmas tree. But now that I realized it was a 4-4-2, it's just obviously it didn't work, and it's just a little more confusing now.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there, Paul. And I think the reason why it was so kind of not shocking, but I think caught people off guard is that Jim Curtin has been known to throw the same lineup and the same formation out game after game after game, and we really haven't seen that this season. Actually, whether that's been down to injuries or rotation because of competitions or whatever it is, and actually. Both Jim and the players are starting to cite that as a reason that they're giving up these kind of like uncharacteristic goals that they call them, is that they're playing almost every game with a different lineup, and it's hard to kind of get a 100% comfortability when you have people coming in and out of the lineup every game. And we saw that again on Saturday in DC. Just 9 minutes in, Christian Dahome opens the scoring. It was, I think if I remember, it was a play DC came down the right side and put a couple good passes together. And it just kind of looked like Union weren't really ready to play in the first 30-40 minutes. And that first goal was kind of a product of that. And I think DC was just kind of passing the ball around people that were chasing it. And at the end of the play, Christian Dahome found the ball in the middle of the box and absolutely slammed it into the top bin. And so it was, as I said before, the 7th game out of 10 in MLS play that they've conceded the first goal. I know we just kind of talked about what Union are kind of contributing to that right now. But, what do you guys think about what's going on with this defense? And why are there so many uncharacteristic goals that this team's giving up? Maybe that wasn't necessarily the case on Saturday. I think DC earned their goals, but regardless, what's going on with this defense right now? I want to start it off with Paul on this one.
So at the beginning of the season, I originally thought that it was based on the defense really not being familiar with Semla due to him being rushed into the starting goal. I know they had a little bit of time in preseason, but now they've had a lot of time, he's played a lot, unfortunately, due to the injuries of Blake and the whole situation there. But something is, honestly, I really couldn't tell you, to be honest. You watch this game, it's the same defense that, that when it's Glesnes and Elliott, and it's the same center back pair, top duo that we all knew that led the top defense in the league 2 years ago. I'm starting to think this is maybe more personal. Maybe teams are starting to figure out how the center backs cut one way, I guess, because it's been the same team for a couple of years in a row now. So they're figuring out, I guess, how the Union play, and, but I couldn't tell you. It's an interesting concept to think about. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, and I'll kick it off to Eric, but when you look at our center back group, we've talked about how good they've been. They've been a part of teams that are one of the best defenses in MLS history. But if you look at them, we've got Jacob Glesnes, 30 years old, Jack Elliott, 28 years old, and then Damian Lowe, 31 years old. That's just the center backs that we're looking at. And we've talked about, and the players have talked about, fatigue and how that plays into how they perform. And I think if you look at the center back as a position, that's one where fatigue and mistakes that come from fatigue are always going to seem more glaring and more obvious, because more often than not, they lead to goals, right? Yes. The striker making letting the ball go under his feet because he's tired and, can't get his foot there in time. That usually is just ending up with the other team's center back playing it out to the midfielder and them going the other way. And hopefully not with too many numbers. Same thing with, not as big of a case, but same thing with the midfielders. Hopefully the mistake there doesn't lead to a goal like we saw with Brujo against losing the ball in the midfield there. But I think that's kind of one thing for me specifically, is that I think when you look at our center back pairing and kind of the wear and tear that they have, to me that looks a little bit like a sign that you could point to. Eric, what are you thinking on that?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Particularly just going with only 3 center backs. Even if you rotate them, you're still going to get that kind of wear and tear. Especially as you get north of 30, things take longer to heal. Mm-hmm. It even like little things, just that tiredness and that soreness takes longer to feel better. I have a hard time just blaming the defense, though. I think it's felt like a lot of times the team as a whole has not come out ready to play up to the standard of the other team. And if part of that may just be because the Union has been one of the teams to beat for a few years now. So teams is always, particularly now in Philly, it's been talked about a lot how good the Union have been. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to imagine teams really wanting to come here and put on a show and prove that they can do it when so few teams have done it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just a matter of other teams just coming out with more intensity than they expect, but that also feels kind of like letting the team off the hook. And it's not like they've been awful either, which makes it a little even harder to explain. They've been kind of middle of the road ish, and sometimes that dips down, and sometimes you do still see the occasional mistake from the defense. But judging by how often the team can turn things around in the second half, it just almost makes it more mystifying, because clearly they know how to play up to that level and they can play really, really well. And they've had some really fantastic attacking sequences and defensive plays this season. that have mostly come in second halves, and it's kind of baffling how they can't. Obviously, the game is different when you're trying to come from behind and you're going forward and stuff, but you'd think they'd be able to take some of that second half magic and at least or at least the energy from it and kind of apply it to the first half and starting a game.
Yeah, it is. I've talked about it with people that don't necessarily watch the Union so much. And it's one of those things that is like so frustrating to try to wrap your head around and explain, why does this team give up so many goals early on in the game? And then right when you start counting them out, they snap back into it. And we saw that again on Saturday in DC. Jacob Murrell scores his first goal in MLS in the 33rd minute. And, it was kind of one of those things on Twitter again where everyone was kind of questioning everything that's going on, questioning Jim, questioning the system, questioning his decisions, and questioning the players. And it looked like Union were facing their third loss in a row. For I'm not even sure when the last time that happened was. It's definitely been quite a long time. And it seemed like it was a little bit of kind of that that doomsday feel again, where that we were feeling kind of after the Pachuca game, where maybe we really need to shake things up. And right as you start to, fire off those tweets, Ali Bedoya out of nowhere, a quick restart on a free kick from Kai Wagner puts it past the keeper and brings Union to within one. And just like that, Union are back in the game, and the belief is there. And it is one of these it's kind of an anomaly. Like, why does this team have to have their back against the wall before they can start playing and start showing what they can do? Why does it have to be an emergency before this team starts to get their ass in gear? And it is seemed like that time and time again, even the losses that they have. Seattle, 3-2 loss, but they should have won that game if you look at the chances that they had. And so this team has an incredible rate of coming back and determination and not quitting on games. But man, if I know I'm saying obvious things here, but Jim Curtin said it too, and it seems so obvious, but it is such a big thing. They need to figure out a way to play with leads. They need to score that first goal and build on it like they were a couple seasons ago. They're not really a team that wants to score a goal and then bunker down and play defense for the rest of the game. They want to put you on your toes and score when you're trying to get back into the game. And so, yeah, it's frustrating to see them go down. But again, we get that goal from Bedoya right before halftime, and they're right back in it. And in the second half, it looked like Union kind of switched things up and went back to a formation that they were a little bit more comfortable in. I'm trying to look at the substitution patterns here. Looks like Uwa came on in the 66th minute, as well as Martinez in the 67th. So I think Union probably went, and I was out with friends that during this game, so I was watching on my phone with one earpiece in. So I think we probably saw Union go back to a formation that they're a little bit more comfortable in, and Eric can kind of speak on that. And that's kind of when things started to click. So Eric, what did you see around that 67th minute when Curtin went to the bench?
I mean, it's that comfort level. This team has been playing this way for years now, and there's a certain comfort level that they have when doing so. And sometimes it pays to switch that up, but sometimes it pays to go back to be, especially when you're kind of on the back foot to a certain extent, which more than some other games where we've had to come back, we were still on the back foot for large periods of that second half. It wasn't quite as one-way traffic as we've seen the team get in some previous comebacks. So I think in those kind of situations, almost going back to basics can pay dividends. And I mean, clearly it did here. But like I said, even in coming back, it wasn't quite as dominant of a comeback as we've seen some other games, and that could just partially be down to just how well they've played in some of these second halves and some of these comebacks. That maybe feels weird to say. Maybe we got a little spoiled by second having to come back from losing, but yeah, I don't know. It was enough. It was enough to inspire a certain amount of hope, but not quite as rousing, I guess you would say, as some other performances outside of the goal, which was the tying goal, was very, very rousing because it was incredible and should have absolutely 100% run away with goal of the week,
if not goal of the year. And that's exactly where I was about to go. Is that, I think you're right, Eric. It wasn't as dominating of a comeback performance as that we've seen, where they're peppering shots on goal, they're hitting the post. They did have a few opportunities, but I think you're right. I think it was as anyone's. I think it was DC's game to lose at that point, and not Union's game to come back in. And it did really kind of come down to a wonder goal. Absolute thrilling shot from Jack McGlynn, but it's probably one that you can't really count on too often to get back in game. No. So Union do have to feel a little bit lucky with that. Maybe not too lucky, because it is the second game in a row that Jack McGlynn has banged one in that corner from his left foot. Or I think the other one was from the opposite side. But regardless, with his left foot, he's getting dialed in from range, and that's something that I think Union have needed, as well as some threat from distance. Almost all of their goals come from balls across the box and tap in and goals off set pieces, and we don't have a ton of threat of someone getting the ball near the top of the box and putting it on net, especially with we've seen. We know what El Brujo did in Orlando, but we also know the other 45 attempts that he's put into the Ware River. So having someone like Jack McGlynn, who's seriously starting to find his footing, in if you will, really something that I'm enjoying right now, and everyone else in Unionverse was enjoying that goal. Absolutely lit up not only Union Twitter, but MLS as a whole. Everyone was kind of taking a minute to enjoy that one. And if you listen to like Todd or the one team we agree on, Kyle, Skylar was also at the press box at that game. Those guys accounted the goal. Apparently they had a perfect angle of it, and I can picture it from where the DC's press box is. And they just said it was unlike any ball that you've ever seen. The way that it was moving, it was almost a knuckleball. And so, yeah, a really great goal to get Union back into the game and ultimately get them a point. But it is just a point down in D for the first time in 2 seasons. And that puts the Union down in 8th place. They're kind of in that spot, in that play-in game position right now, where they would play DC if the playoffs were to start today. They do have a game in hand against almost everyone that's above them. But yeah, we started being beaten, and since then we have 2 losses and a draw, which brings Union to 14 points after 10 games. Before we move on to Orlando and kind of talking about that one, how are you guys feeling about where Union are sitting? I know if you think this is kind of funny, and maybe this is half our fault, but if you look at a couple episodes ago, we were talking about the next couple games Union had coming up, and if they win those games, could we be looking at a potential supporter shield season? And now, after losing 2 and drawing 1, we're looking at potentially not being in the playoff picture after this upcoming weekend. So with all that kind of in context here, how are you guys feeling? Let's kick it off with Paul. How you feeling on where the Union are sitting? Is it time to panic? Do we Do we need to play our game in hand before we really think about it too much? What are you feeling?
I'm gonna say a little bit of both. I think it's time to panic that they haven't found a way to stop conceding and going down in the first half, almost a quarter of the way through the season. You would think, that would hopefully just be early mistakes and early season payoff. But it's continuing to happen every single game, and that's really worrying for me. But at the same time, you win your game in hand, you jump up to fourth in the table. So it's like you could either think both ways, and I would agree with you both ways, no matter what you think. But I think this upcoming match against Orlando is a crucial match for the way that the Union want this season to continue and go on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I know we were saying this about Seattle, but if there's a game in the next couple that are ones that you should win, it's probably this Orlando game at home. And Union really need a win at home. Making it 3 losses at home in a row would be really tough times for this team that's been so dominant at Subaru Park. Eric, before we move on to Orlando, what's your kind of final thoughts on where Union are sitting after that DC game? And where's your head at? Is it time to panic, or should we just relax for a little bit longer?
I'm a little more relaxed than I was after that second DC goal went in. I was despondent after that, and I think if we had continued on that trajectory, I would still be. But again, the team showed the fight to come back, and that gives me more optimism because you can fix the issues theoretically. Obviously, the team has struggled to do so, but theoretically, you can fix the issues. It's harder to get that fighting spirit, particularly when you don't already have it.
Yeah.
That's a challenging thing to bring into a team, especially one that's struggling. So I think the foundation is there to, if we can start putting the first halves together and playing games well, like from the beginning, I think that competitive fire can translate into putting other teams away and to building off of winning positions rather than just coming back from losing ones. So that more than anything else gives me hope. But a lot is riding on this upcoming game and how they play in it, because with all the optimism that has come with today's signing, and yesterday, we should mention yesterday's Meet the Team event as well. I've seen a lot of people had a really good time. Paul, I know you were there, so you can speak more to that. But
Yeah.
With all the optimism from that and all of the new eyes that may be on this team as soon as this weekend because of the Sullivan signing, we need to come out and bury Orlando, or at the very least outplay them. It's one thing if an unlucky goal goes in, whatever, against the run of play, but we need to outplay them, and really we need to score the first goal so badly, because every game when these early goals go in, it's like, here we go again. And it gets harder and harder to make these miraculous comebacks unless you're Bayer Leverkusen. As the longer those streaks go on. So yeah, a lot of my mood is riding on this weekend's game. And I wouldn't say I'm optimistic, but I'm not pessimistic either. I'm kind of more in I hope they come out and kick ass and everyone goes home happy. And I'm not expecting it, but I'm also not expecting it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think to your point, Eric, about there are frustrations about this team that are justified and things that do need to be fixed moving forward in order for Union to have a real shot at winning anything this season, or even sniffing winning silverware this season. But to your point, they do have some characteristics that are really hard to teach or to grow later in the season, such as scoring goals. It's really hard to get a team that started the season cold and not scoring to all of a sudden start scoring goals when everyone has no confidence because you haven't been scoring. That's really hard to build. It's a little bit easier to fix a defense or to sign someone to make your defense a little bit better or your midfield's a little bit better. Probably not going to happen, but it's a lot harder to get things clicking offensively late in the season. So seeing this team have that tenacity and have the ability to actually score goals is a huge positive. And if you look at the amount of goals they've scored 19, which is good enough to be 5th in the league right now. So they do have the ability to put plays together and to put balls in the back of the net. But again, they have to stop letting teams that don't score goals very often put goals on them. And you know, we saw against Seattle, I think they had scored 10 goals all season in their previous 6 or 7 games before they played Union, and then they scored 3 in 30 minutes or whatever it was in the first half. You know, we've seen it this time and time again this season where teams are scoring just kind of uncharacteristic goals against our defense, and we have to cut that out. And it comes with a really good opportunity on Saturday against a team who's not scoring a lot of goals. Once again, Orlando, just 11 goals this season so far. And they're coming to Subaru Park on Saturday, so it's going to be another opportunity for Union to kind of right all the things that they've been letting go wrong previously. So just kind of looking at Orlando real quickly here, in their previous 5 games, they only have 1 win, 2 draws and 2 losses as well. Their top scorer is Duncan McGuire with 4 goals. Outside of that, they've got about 5 or 6 players that have scored a single goal. Other than that, they are struggling to put balls in the back of the net right now, which probably means some guy we've never heard of is going to have a brace on Saturday night. That's just kind of how it seems to be going for Union right now. But let's just kick it off with kind of initial thoughts about Orlando before we kind of talk about what lineup we might see on Saturday. Paul, what are you thinking? What have you seen from Orlando? Have you watched them at all this season? Do you think this is a team Union should be bringing 3 points back with on Saturday?
So I haven't been able to watch any Orlando this season, but from reading articles and all, I read an article from the mainland, an Orlando City blog, and it was basically their 3 keys to the match, how to win at the Union this season. And one of their points was basically about Oscar Pareja, the manager for Orlando, basically not figuring out how to run the balance for this club. So, I mean, obviously they're 14th in the East. They're struggling. They've only scored 11 goals in 10 games. Luis Muriel doesn't have a goal yet for them.
No.
So, which scares me for this weekend, I will be honest. So obviously they're struggling pretty bad. So the Union should take care of business at home, but they should have taken care of business at home against Seattle. And clearly they didn't do that. So, but I'm feeling positive once again, and I think they'll be able to do it.
Yeah, and if you look at kind of those last 5 games that we were talking about, their 1 win comes against DC United, of course, 3-2 win against DC United. But let me see here. Their other games that they had in their previous 5, they had a 1-1 draw against New York Red Bull, a 2-2 draw against Montreal, and then a 2-1 loss against Toronto FC, which is probably one that stings for them. I believe they were at home for that one as well. And then they had a 1-0 loss to FC Cincinnati this previous weekend. I believe they were also at home for that one too. And I think, if I'm remembering, I think maybe Orlando had a red card in that game. I'm pulling it up now to check. I might be completely. No, they did. Yeah, they had a red card. Rodrigo Schlegel had a red card. That's one of their center backs. So that's something to look out for on Saturday as well. As you said, Paul, their DP striker, remind me of his name, Luis Mariel. He's yet to have a goal for them, and he didn't even start on Saturday. They've kind of realized, like, hey, this Duncan McGuire kid that we almost sold for a bunch of money and he fell back into our laps, maybe we should play him. Because every time he's on the field, he scores goals, which isn't a great thing for Union because it seems like he might be on the field on Saturday. And we know we've kind of seen what Union center back pairings have struggled to do against big physical center forwards this season. But it's going to be another big test for that center back group. And let's start talking about what kind of roster we might, or what kind of starting 11 we might see. Let's start with what formation we think we're going to see, because I think, in times past, that's been a little bit easier to predict because Jim Curtin is kind of a human of repetitiveness. He likes to keep things the same and stick to his bread and butter. But this season, it's been a little bit harder to predict. And at times when we thought it would be, not much thought into who the starting 11 would be, it's been completely different. So let's start, Eric. What kind of formation you think we're going to see Jim Curtin throw out against Orlando on Saturday?
I think we're going back to basics,
Yeah.
especially after the positive change last weekend.
So basically, 4-4-2 diamond.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they'll use that as the platform, and then if things aren't going well again, then we may see changes later on and adjustments within the game. But yeah, I think we'll start with the usual.
Gotcha, Paul. What you thinking? You think the same thing there, or you think Curtin will go with something else?
No, I agree. You saw, you mentioned with DC when what's it called? When he switched back to that formation, the Union started to play more like the Union we know them to be. So I think Curtin's just gonna slip right back into the usual formation especially at home, with wanting to get back into the 3 points at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And Orlando, I think their kind of preferred formation is they play almost like a 4-2-3-1, where they have Duncan McGuire up top, but then they have those kind of three midfielders of Facundo Torres, Ojeda, and then they have a couple different guys that play out on the right, but they have a couple. Araujo plays in the center defensive midfielder spot, as well as usually like Cartanega, or they have a couple different guys that can play in that position as well. But I think because of that, I think you'll probably see, like you guys are saying, that 4-4-2 diamond formation with two strikers up top and Gazdag behind them to kind of riff off of and play 1-2s together. We have a couple of options in the midfield position, but let's start kind of from the back to the front. That's how I kind of like to build who I think is going to be on the starting 11. Obviously, we haven't heard from Jim Curtin in regards to this game yet. We heard him talk about the Sullivan signing today, but he didn't talk about any health updates or anything regarding Orlando. So we don't know what the status for Andre Blake is, but just given where he's been or hasn't been the last couple of weeks, where are you guys feeling on Andre? You think we see him, or you think Oliver Semla stays in net on Saturday?
I think Semla's going to stay in net. I saw on Matthew to George, he tweeted that Blake was not at training today.
Okay.
So I think that pretty solidifies that Semla's going to be in net on
And actually,
Saturday.
I think, Paul, you were at the team signing last night, and you can actually maybe give a little bit of an update, maybe not something super official, but you were expected to see Andre Blake there and then did not end up seeing him, correct?
That is correct. So Blake was originally on the picture, I guess, the lineup that was supposed to be around the stadium, and my friend ended up buying a plaque he's my friend's a goalkeeper, so he loves Andre Blake. He bought up Andre Blake plaque for him to specifically sign it, and we were all excited and stuff. And we were talking about it, and we overheard one of the Union people saying that Blake wasn't at the event due to a family emergency. So hopefully everything is okay on that end. If that's what's truly going on, I'm not going to speculate anything in that because my thoughts might get me in trouble. But yeah, that's all I really know on that end.
Yeah, absolutely. We really do have absolutely no way of knowing if that's the truth. That's
Yeah.
just the excuse that, or not the excuse, but that's going to be the reasoning that Union give out. And if that is the case, like you said, we wish Andre and his family well. I think if you're a Union fan, it's tough to see Andre in this situation.
Yes.
We're used to seeing someone that's so full of confidence and one of those guys that makes not the room but the entire stadium smile with his persona and the way he carries himself and shows his love for this team. So seeing him hurt and seeing him struggling with whatever he's going on, whatever his status with the club moving forward after this year, it's tough to see whatever he's going through. So everyone that's a Union fan would love to see Andre Blake back between the posts on Saturday. But sometimes, that may not be a possibility because of injuries or a family emergency. So based off of that information, Eric, you're feeling the same, I would assume, correct?
Yeah, I think so. And I think he just needs time to heal.
I agree.
Like, even if he could theoretically go, we've had a lot of games this season where he's started and then clearly not been 100%. So I think we've really, even if he's theoretically able to go, I think we still need to give him some time and let him actually heal. I mean, I touched on earlier talking about with the defense about how once you're over 30, like things take a lot longer to heal and feel better.
Yeah.
And we need to give him that time to get back to as close to 100% as possible.
Yeah, and it's tough because he's such a competitor, right? He's one of those guys where he's almost like a hockey player where it's like if he can go, he's going to play. And previously, who's to tell Andre Blake he's not playing when you have some of the other options behind him that aren't as suitable as a backup? The team doesn't feel as comfortable with. How do you tell that guy no? It is, I think I agree with you guys. I think we're going to see Oliver Semla in net given all the context. I agree with you, Eric. I think even if there is no kind of family emergency going on, I think that it maybe is just the right decision to let Oliver Semla play in this game and give Andre Blake a little bit more time. But let's start moving into the back line here. I think it's probably the easiest one to shoe in is probably the left back. I think there's going to be no objections with Kai Wagner playing on the left unless any of you guys think that maybe we'll see Nate Harriel move over there.
No.
Cool. So let's go and talk about the center back pairing. For me, specifically, I don't know. I go back almost every game on who I think our best performing center backs are. But currently, right now, I really am missing the duo of Jacob Glesnes and Jack Elliott. It seems like I don't know. Maybe it's a comfortability thing to me, but it seems like they play the best together. And when they don't play super well, it seems like it's because of one of them and not because two people are trying to make something that's not as comfortable work. So where are your guys kind of heads at? Who you think we're going to see in the center back pairing on Saturday night? Let's start Eric with this one.
Yeah, it's interesting because I agree with you. I think they work the best as a pairing, but I think Damian Lowe has arguably been the best of the three this season individually. So it makes it a tough choice. But I think I'm with you. It would be nice. It feels like everything about this game is going back to basics and like being comfortable and seeking that kind of home comforts in our home stadium. So I think we see the old fashioned pairing, so to speak, of Glesnes and Elliott.
Okay, Paul, what you thinking on that one?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, although I wouldn't be surprised if Lowe did play due to the physicality that McGuire brings. Um,
Mm.
Lowe he's a very physical defender. He stands up good against, I guess, those types of strikers. Um, but I do think we just go back to the basics that we've known for the last couple years, and it's going to be Elliott and Glesnes to try to get this team to feel, I guess, not comfortable is the word I want to use, but I guess that's the word I will use.
Okay, yeah, I've gone back and forth on who I think is going to be the pairing, even in just the last couple minutes here. But I think I kind of agree with Eric. I think maybe we see Damian Lowe to give a little bit more of that physicality. I think Jack Elliott is a physical player as well, but I think he gives up a little bit of that physicality at times due to just being a little bit not as hefty as a player. I think is a way you could put it. So I think I'm gonna go against the grain with you guys. I think we're actually gonna see Damian Lowe and Jacob Glesnes on Saturday. Don't know why. That's just what I'm feeling as of 30 seconds. So that's what I'm going to go with. Let's move on to right back real quick, and then we'll finish this up. I think the easy choice here is Nate Harriel, but interested to see if you guys have any other thoughts on that.
No, I think it's going to be Harriel. I love Mbazo, but he's shown a little bit of struggle when he's played this year. So I think it's just going to be Harriel, who's looked phenomenal so far this season.
Yeah, I agree. I think Harriel's the better defender, and I think we need that right now, even at home. So yeah, I think we see Harriel as well, and
Yep.
maybe he'll actually get. He had a really good header that was just or opportunity that was with a better connection would have gone in. So I want to see him get one. I want to see
Yeah.
him kind of get that one back this weekend.
Yep, absolutely. Before we move on to the midfield, just want to bring up the last three center back pairings in the last three games. Against RSL, we had Jack Elliott and Jacob Glesnes. Against Seattle, we had Jack Elliott and Damian Lowe. And then against DC, we had Jacob Glesnes and Damian Lowe. So three games, three center back pairings. Yeah, I don't know. I think if I'm a center back, I'm probably not annoyed, but a little bit. It may be a little hard to feel like you have that stability that we've seen this Union defense have if you're playing with a different guy every game. Moving into the midfield, I think this is one that's really interesting to talk about. With Leon Flock back, do we see him start over Brujo, who a lot of people have been saying is struggling over the last couple games, or does Jose Martinez keep his place on Saturday? Paul, what you think?
I think you have to start Brujo. I think I think Brujo's starting. Nothing
Eric?
really else to say.
I agree. I think one game out of the starting lineup sent a bit of a message, but I think he'll be back.
Yeah.
Back for this one.
Yeah, I think so too. And it was great to see Leon Flock get back into the lineup the other night, and especially it was a little bit shocking to me to see him start. But I think it came at a time. I think it was coming at a time where Jim Curtin was trying to send a message to someone who had put a message out on Instagram mid-game, even though most of us can't really understand what the hell he was saying. He was talking about something, and Jim Curtin said he knew what he was talking about, but I think that was coming with a message sent. Leon Flock starting, and not necessarily this is best for your fitness and getting back into the team. But I think we will see Jose start on Saturday. On either side of him, for me, it's pretty simple. But I want to hear your guys' thought. I won't tip you off on who I think is going to be on the two shuttler positions. Paul, what you thinking?
McGlynn and Sullivan again. I know it's really getting repetitive with my guesses, but I really think that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. Eric, any complaints, or you think stick with the hot hand, the guy who scored 2 goals in 2 games, and Quinn Sullivan, who seems to have a lot of hand in creating chances for this Union team so far this season?
Yeah, I agree. The only way I could see that being different is maybe if Sullivan starts up front.
Oh,
I could see that wrinkle being thrown in, and then maybe you throw in Bedoya instead in the midfield. But if that's not the case, then I think I agree with McGlynn and Sullivan.
That's an interesting an interesting thought, and I think maybe Ali Bedoya is one that deserves it a little bit. I think he has played well when he's played. He's played in positions that maybe aren't the most comfortable for him, and he's contributed for this team too. We had that last minute goal for an equalizer against Sporting Kansas City on the road, and then obviously that goal, the opening goal for Union on Saturday night down in DC once they're down 2-0. So he is someone that is contributing, and I think that is a fair shout to put Bedoya in one of those shuttler positions and Quinn up top, especially with Curtin saying that Michael Ua's form hasn't been super strong recently, and that's kind of why he didn't start against DC. For me personally, I think I'm going to go with what Eric has been kind of saying this whole night, that we're going to go back to our bread and butter. I think we're going to see Jack McGlynn and Quinn Sullivan as the shuttlers. And then just to round it off, let's just talk about the front three as a whole. We'll talk about that as an attacking trio and who we think is going to play there. Obviously, Eric, you just brought up a very interesting point of Quinn Sullivan playing up there and Bedoya being on the right. I am going to say that Quinn starts on the right and not up top. But Eric, what's your final thought on the front three? The two strikers and the number 10 sitting behind them.
I do think I agree with you. I think Sullivan will be back in the midfield. I think a struggling team like Orlando is a good opportunity to give a struggling player like Ua a chance to go out there and show what he's made of. So I think we'll see the classic pairing of Carranza and Ua up top with Gazdag just behind them.
Yeah.
Really with so maybe a little bit of pressure put on Ua to perform. Pressure from Curtin, I should say, like a message to that he needs to go out there and really fight for his spot in this lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that really sets good teams or great teams apart from good teams is having that kind of inner squad competition. And right now we're just not seeing that at the striker position in particular. Your backup striker outside of Ua and Carranza is Quinn Sullivan, it seems. That seems to be the third choice, and then maybe Chris Donovan. Tyboribo's probably not going to see the field. I think we can just stop talking about that as an option. It's up to him to change that. Curtin has said that, but I haven't seen anything that indicates that he's going to be an option on Saturday. So, Paul, I'm thinking exactly what Eric said. I think we're going to see Carranza and Ua up top with Gazdag behind them. What are you thinking? Is that the right move? Should we see is Chris Donovan a fair shout in Ua's spot? Should Curtin send another message? Or likewise of what Eric said, is this an opportunity for Ua to kind of get his ass in gear against a struggling team?
Yeah, I think it is Carranza and Gazdag. Ura needs to get his form back in shape, score the goals like he scored against Atlanta, and he had that little streak going on. And Orlando is a good team to do it as. I'm gonna read a little paragraph from David Rowe. It's the same article I've been mentioning from Orlando City. It's regarding their defense. So maybe that will help out. It says, I feel like a broken record, but Orlando City's defense needs to stop making the dumb mistakes that have resulted in way too many goals this season. Philadelphia's attackers will punish the Lions if that is allowed to happen yet again. So please, for the sake of my sanity, stop giving up the stupid goals.
Sounds like it's something I would have written, honestly. Like that sounds like
that sounds all too familiar.
So I think this is a great spot for Mikel Ura to, based off of that paragraph. Like I said, I haven't watched any Orlando, but based off that paragraph with the way Ura does play, it sounds like he could maybe feed off a mistake or two and get through with the speed we know he has and get that confidence back up.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only has he not really scored, but I think I saw a stat today that neither of you, I don't think Union have had a goal come from a striker in the previous 4 games. It might be 3 games, but all of their goals I think have come from the Jack McGlynn's, the Ali Bedoyas. And so Daniel Gazdak has been someone that's put goals in. And I think that's someone to really note. 5 goals in his previous 7 games, all from open play, all coming after he was called out, not only by Union fans, rightfully so, but really, I don't want to say harshly, but very directly called out by his national team manager and his former club manager when he was back in Hungary. He clearly took that really personal. He's been on a little bit of a tear. 5 goals in 7 games. And he's someone that looks like he can be counted on to put goals in the back of the net when Union are looking for one, too. So I think I agree with you guys on the 3. Let's get score predictions. Then we'll really quickly do our on the volley take, and then we'll get out of here on late Thursday night. So score predictions. I'll start it off. I'm going to go Union. I think they are going to give up a goal, but I think this is a game that the offense is going to get going and they're going to start early. I'm going to say 3-1 Union on Saturday night. I think Daniel Gazlak's going to keep his hot form going, and I think Julian Carranza will get on the score sheet for the first time in a couple games. Eric, interested to hear what you're thinking.
I was going to go exactly the same way, exactly the same score with 3-1 Union win. I just checked. The last goal from one of our strikers was ironically from Ua against Atlanta.
Okay.
So it's been, I think I'm with you on Carranza scoring as well, because I think it's been a little while at this point. And it's not like he's played badly. Or at least it hasn't felt like he's played badly, but he needs to get back on the score sheet, as does Ua. So I think I'm going to say a goal from each of them and a goal from Cavan Sullivan, because he needs to take some of that spotlight back from his brother.
That's a fair shout. And I think, if there's 2 guys on this team that need goals, it's probably Ua and Julian Carranza. Julian Carranza obviously has aspirations of either moving to Europe or signing a big contract with the Union. And Mikael Ua's got an option up at the end of the season, which I think a lot of people would hit the pass button on in this given moment. So if he wants to stay where he is, if he wants to, if that's, and that's not to say that he wants to. Maybe he doesn't like Philadelphia either, but if he wants to put himself in a good position to go to a good team after Philadelphia or stay in Philadelphia, he's got to start putting goals in the back of the net. And that's what we want to see too. We want to see him scoring goals. That's what strikers need to do in order to be happy, and they're not going to be if they're not. So that's what we need to see. Paul, any other thoughts on?
No. My prediction was 2-1 though.
Okay.
I think, and the striker drought is going to end with both strikers getting a goal. That is my prediction.
Right on. Cool. So that's it for our kind of preview of the Orlando game. Obviously talked a lot about Cavan Sullivan and the weight that signing has on the Union, the Unionverse and MLS as a whole. And you talked about the team comeback down to DC. Just to kind of wrap it up, we're going to go with our on the volley take. I think an important to note to bring up with this Cavan Sullivan news is that he's not the only promising player on this Union 2 team, and we've kind of talked about that tonight and in previous episodes as well. But there's a lot of people coming up through the system that are going to be household names in this Union team in just a few short years. So I think our on the volley take tonight is going to be one player outside of young 14-year-old Sullivan that we think is worth paying attention to from the depths of the Union Academy or Union 2 that we think people should pay attention to over the next year and coming years as well. Eric, I'm going to start with you.
Is it cheating to say David Vasquez since he's already with the first team? I think he's one to keep an eye on, but I'll go with someone. I think Frankie Westfield. I think we're all. Yeah, I think everyone thinks he's gonna make some kind of impact. In part just because we don't have a backup left back really right now, so that gives him a bit of an advantage. But also, he deserves it from his play. So I think he's really the one I've got my eye on the most right now. And bonus on the volley take. I don't know anything about this reality show that Marco Fabian's going to be in, but I think he's going to win it.
That's awesome. Heard Marco Fabian is a former Union player, is about to be on a dating show. I forget what it's called, but my girlfriend actually brought it up to me, and it was kind of one of those cool moments where I was like, hey, there's a ex-Union player on that show, and she's like, that's a soccer player? So yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I think Frankie Westfield, you kind of took my my pick, Eric. If you guys aren't familiar with him, he's a great young left back playing down with you two right now. He actually is someone that I think gets mistaken for Cavan Sullivan a little bit because they both have that like platinum blonde, almost like buzz cut, if you will. And I can see why, because they both have really energetic, they just dart around the field, and they're making long passes and trying to beat players. And he's a left back, and it is kind of what you see with Kai Wagner, where he's a little bit more attacking than he is defensively, but he does have a little bit of snarl as well to him. And so I think you're right, Eric. He is someone that could be a real strong potential to get some minutes later this season, or hopefully next season, when we're kind of missing some players due to competition. But for me personally, before we move on to Paul's take, I'm going to go with the striker, Eddie Davis. Young kid right now, but he's playing really, really well for Union 2 and putting some goals in the back of the net. And, obviously striker is a position that Union have, I don't want to say missed on, but they definitely would want a little bit more from the striking, the players that they've bought to bring in to play striker over the last couple of years. When you look at Michael Uwa and when you look at Ty Baribo, Chris Donovan has had some moments, but I don't think long term many people see Chris Donovan as a number one starting option for Philadelphia Union. So Eddie Davis is someone that I look at that could potentially come up through the system and make a splash at being a really strong contributor for this team over the next couple of seasons. Paul, what you thinking? What's your on the volley take this week?
So I actually have two. One of them's more like an academy youngster. The other one's on Union 2. My Union 2 guy, CJ Olney.
Okay.
He's been really good this season when he's came in. I think he's going to be a phenomenal fit. I know the midfield is a little crowded right now with everyone in there, but I'm expecting some players to head into bigger clubs in the future with that lethal left foot that Jack McGlynn has and Quinn Sullivan's rise. And then my academy, I guess, is Jameer Johnson down in
Great pick.
U17s.
Yeah, he's exciting.
No, Jameer, he was someone about bringing up as well. He's someone that's super, super dynamic, plays really well alongside Cavan when they've played at the GA Cup. And yeah, he's someone that I think is worth putting on your radar as well. Cool. Before we end it for tonight, anybody have any last minute thoughts, anything from around the soccer world, even outside of Union, that they want to bring up before we head out for tonight?
I don't even want to think about things like the Champions League right now.
One thing I will say is I hope Leverkusen does end up getting the invincible season. Everything that Xabi Alonso has done with that club this season has been incredible, especially when he took over. They were second to last in the Bundesliga. So as a fan of the sport, I think it would be awesome to see that. Plus, my German team is FC Schalke, so they have no relevance to what happens in the Bundesliga. So that would be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I'm absolutely right there with you. They've been an incredible team to watch this season, and I don't want to see it end. I think it would be incredible to see them have the unbeaten season, and then they'll end up winning the Europa League finals with that as well as winning the Bundesliga, the first team. I'm sorry, Eric, but the first team in for quite some time that isn't Eric's team to do it. So yeah,
After 11 straight years, I'm okay with giving one up,
hey,
especially with this magical season that Leverkusen is having.
that's the spirit. That's the spirit. Of course, for me as a Tottenham fan, it just makes so much sense that the first year you don't win is with Harry Kane. So
I think it's I still blame Eric Dyer.
yeah,
I think Harry Kane you can overcome, but having two Spurs players, I don't think that is enough to. I don't think any team can overcome that.
I think you're absolutely right. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in on a late Thursday night. I know we're wrapping up pretty late here, but again, we do come live once a week, usually on Thursdays, sometimes on Saturdays, about an hour before the game for away games. We usually get a reaction to live lineup drops and whatnot, and those are a super great time. So, regardless, please tune in, follow, subscribe, all that stuff. Keep up to date with when we are going to go live. And thank you guys so much for tuning into these shows. They've been a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much. I'm Jimmy. That's Eric and Paul, and we've been Doop on the Volley. Have a good night, everyone.